Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's Wednesday, and we're here on the Women's Leadership Forum live platform. I'm welcoming you here today. My name is Colette Coakley. I am the founder of the Women's Leadership Forum, and I'm also the Vice President of Human Resources for Maryland Public Television. I am glad to be back on this platform. I have invited other women to be a part of this platform, for which I am proud that they are giving you what it is that you really want to hear, what it is that sometimes you need to hear, and what it is that you may venture to hear for your future endeavors. But today, I am excited for my guest here today. And we're going to talk about something that a lot of times we really don't want to give a whole lot of thought to. I know that I didn't, but I'm happy here today to have somebody who makes it seem much easier to digest, somebody who you kind of rely on for their wisdom to make the pathway of making your will possible. Now, a lot of times we don't want to talk about our wills. We don't want to talk about that because it involves talking about when you are no longer here. But I'm going to tell you, it is something that you would be um, uh, faulty in not doing, And particularly in the African American community, we don't like to um, uh, talk about those things, and we don't like to record what it is that we need to record to make it easier for those that we leave behind. But we can make it so much easier, and we can make it simpler, and we can make it such that it is orderly for those who we leave behind when we pass away. So, who do I have here today? I have Samhra Stevenson, and she owns her own business. So she's a a female entrepreneur, right? And that's a lot of times who we promote. And we're going to talk about female entrepreneurs in a different way towards the end of the show. But she's also an advocate in the community, So that is right up my alley. So today I welcome Samhra Stevenson. She's a lawyer, she's a wellness advocate. And if you follow her on Facebook, you will get so many tips on how you could lead a better life, how you could make health and wellness. You can get exercise tips, eating tips. I looked at that tomato that she grows in her garden. It was huge. If you want to know how to grow your own garden, she can give you tips on that. If you want to know how to travel, she can give you tips. So she's a well-rounded woman, my kind of woman. I welcome you here today, Miss Stevenson.
Thank you so much, Colette. I appreciate it. Let me just first say I'm excited to be here. Any opportunity to talk about this estate planning stuff we're talking about is a blessing. So thank you so much for inviting me.
So, before we get started, I want you to tell us a little bit about your path, because when I interview women, I like for people to understand the path that they take, and sometimes that the path that they take is not always this straight path. Some of us, come out of the womb knowing I'm going to be a doctor. And that is what they venture to be each and every time. Everything that they do has to do with what they set out to be. But sometimes some of us fall into what it is that we are, or we're introduced to something different along the way. So before we talk about that, could you talk about the estate planning? If you could just tell us a little bit about your path.
Yeah, sure. I'm an attorney, but I'm an entrepreneur, just like you said, and I often advocate for this office without walls lifestyle, which is I think what you were talking about. And so when I found my office without walls is when I found my freedom, is when I found my happiness. But how I got to, I never intended to be a family law attorney, never intended to practice, do any kind of estate planning. I thought those were the most two boring subjects in law school. So
Oh,
totally ended up here by mistake. When I came out of law school, I was a fist in the air, power to the people. I wanted to change the world. But the economy said differently, and there were no jobs available for that kind of thing. So I ended up clerking on a criminal felony docket in Baltimore City, and then going on to work for a large firm in DC, where I quickly became part of one of the minions, just working away 7 to 9 every day. I said I would be there for 6 months, ended up there for 2 years, and every Friday I would get that paycheck in my arm, just get me right in there, staying right there. And
okay.
eventually I tried working at smaller firms, trying to find my way. And long story short, ended up with a mid-sized firm in Landover, where I was trying to become a trial attorney. And the only position they had was for a family law attorney. And so I decided I'll practice family law. I want to get in the courtroom. That's what I'll do. And what I found is that I could be an advocate, even as a family law attorney, because I ended up starting advocating for fathers' rights. I got fathers coming into my office, talking about the system is rigged. I'm 6 months out, a year out of school or at the bar. I'm talking about it's not rigged. Just keep your head up. And then, 6 to 8 months in for me, I'm like, yeah, no, the system is kind of rigged. And so ended up, advocating on those lines. But what that job came with was training in estates and trusts, which is what I was not expecting. And what I found while I was there, and it was a labor union firm, which means that the clients we had were prepaid. They were DC fire, teachers, Secret Service. They had all of their legal services paid for. And even in trying to get estate planning done with them, trying to get them to come into the office was a pain in the butt. And even if I could get them to come into the office, they wouldn't bring the right documents. And even if I could get them to come to the office, bring the documents, and draft the estate plan, getting them to come back to signing it was a whole other fiasco. So when I went out on my own, without getting into a cumbersome story about that, but when I went out on my own, one of the first things I did was make sure I made things accessible. So I created Wills on Wheels. So my law office is S.A. Stevenson Law Offices, and underneath that, I have a separate branch for estate planning that's called Wills on Wheels. And the idea was to take the middleman out. This is a few years ago. I'm still no husband, no kids, but the idea was I have time. Let me go to you. Let me come to you.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
That's
and that's okay.
okay,
And that's
right?
okay. It's part of my
All
purpose.
right.
It's part of my journey. And so I would go to people's homes, and I would sit in there, do their consults. This is just me by myself. And we've grown since then. Sit there, do their consults. I would go home, draft everything, and I would come back and I would do their signing for them right there on the spot. And what this ended up being was a great asset for both older people who couldn't get out of the house, but also younger families who had small kids who couldn't find times to schedule when they could both be in my office at the same time. And so instead of dragging their feet on this process, I was able to go to their home, provide that service in the space and environment that was good for them. And since then, we've grown. Wheels on Wheels has grown to include a trademark, the Office Without Walls that I mentioned earlier. And the idea with Office Without Walls, which I trademarked, is both making justice more accessible to people. So using technology, legal technology, to make the law more accessible to our clients, more understandable, more of a process that involves them and includes them, but also making quality of life for attorneys better. So the other part of what was going on for me when I went out on my own was that it was a survival thing. I mean, there was a part of it that where I was pushed out of the nest, but there was a part of it where I was not going to survive as an attorney working the way that traditional law firms practice. I created my law firm around the idea that the attorney comes first in terms of the wellness, because if we're better attorneys and we're taking care of self-care, we can be better for our clients and better advocates. So Office Without Walls also encompasses that as well.
Okay. And so it sounds like you're bringing, if I may coin the phrase, power to the people. So you are actually brought justice, and you made it accessible to more people.
Yes. And that's why you see all the stuff I post about how to work remotely and all those things. Like, it should be, law practice should be accessible to people. The law and what it has to offer people should be accessible. So it goes both ways.
Okay, so I want to ask you this question so that we can talk about the topic at hand. Why is estate planning important? Because, okay, no disrespect to Miss Aretha Franklin, but we come to find out that she didn't have a will. So why is it important? Somebody of her stature, right? Somebody of her stature, you would think that they would have a will. So why are wills? Tell us why wills are important.
I'm going to talk about wills and why they're important and why those type of typical estate planning things that people automatically go to when you say estate plan are important. But I'm also going to talk about there's a part of estate planning that applies to everybody. I don't care who you are. There's something that applies to you. But let's talk about wills, just the most basic foundational thing you can have put in place with regards to your final wishes. If you were to die without a will, you die intestate. That means you did not sit as a testator or a testatrix if you're a female and create a last will and testament. And you've now died intestate. The intestacy laws in your state where you live will apply. That means the state decides what happens to your things, and they also decide what happens to gifts that go to minors. They decide what kind of taxes apply to your estate. And let's just talk about right off the bat. You pass away, whoever survives you goes to open an estate administration in the circuit court. Let's make it in Howard County. You die without a will. Now a bond has to be set in order for a personal representative to be appointed to your estate. If you die with a will, that bond is a nominal bond, typically, and this is not in every circumstance, but typically your bond is a nominal bond of $100.
Mm-hmm.
That's all your family's burdened with in order to get this process started. If you die without a will and you don't meet the requirements that are necessary for the appointment of that personal representative, you're paying a bond that is several thousands of dollars instead of $100 because it's going to be a percentage of the assets in your estate. And you can say, I don't have anything, but you won't know what you'll have until you pass away. So that's just one example of how a will just from the beginning helps to make the process easier, alleviate some of the strain on the people that survive you after you're gone. Let's say you have kids. If you're over the age of 18, you should have a will, period. But let's say you have kids, leaving things to minors. It doesn't just happen just because you write on a piece of paper where you want it to go. That doesn't allow for distributions to be made to anybody under the age of 18.
Wait, so say that again. Say that again slowly, because some people took out a pad, right? They took out their pad, I don't know, and they wrote on a piece of paper, I have my Cadillac and a Ferrari. Okay, I'm dreaming, but they put they Cadillac, Ferrari, and I'm going to leave that to my son Joe.
And that's great. And that's great. And then someone will see that and you'll see that he left it to Joe. But if Joe's is not of legal age to take it, he's not getting it. And so the court's going to have to get involved with appointing a trustee. And who's going to pay for that trustee? Well, it's going to come from the estate proceeds, which is what you were intending to leave behind to your child. If you want to go a step further than that, you can leave language in your will that allows for directives for a trust to be created, which would deal with just this kind of thing, where you're leaving things to somebody who's not the age of 18. And I don't think we have enough time for me to get into all the different types of trusts, but one of the trusts that applies when you're creating a will, a last will and testament, is a springing trust, or it's called a testamentary trust, but I like to call it a springing trust because it's more descriptive. It springs up in the event that something happens. So in the event that you pass away and your child has not reached whatever age you've designated, it can be 18, which is the legal age, but it could also be 22, 25, 27. If they have not reached those ages, or they have not fulfilled whatever stipulations you've laid out, completed 4 years of school, whatever, then that money is going to be held in trust for them until they do attain those values. So what does that mean to you? That means that you're creating structure. You're not just leaving things behind. You're creating purpose. What is it that you want to be done with your things? What is the legacy you want to leave behind? How do you want the assets you're leaving behind to benefit that minor?
So it almost sounds like you're saying, even though I've passed away, I'm still in control. I still am in control of how my assets that I work so hard for, how they may be distributed.
Correct.
Nobody is deciding that for me. I have actually decided that. And I'm doing it legally.
Correct. And if you want to go a step further than that, creating a revocable trust, which is the trust that actually is here while you're living and breathing, allows you to transfer assets without having to go through that probate process at all.
Ooh.
If
Ooh.
you really want to
Okay.
get fancy.
Okay. So how do I get started? How would I get started?
How do you
You
get
know,
started?
am I going around my house with a pad and a pencil, or what? You know, how am I just sitting there and thinking of like, what is it that I own?
Uh, I suggest giving me a call, honestly, and talking to an attorney, sitting down for
Okay.
a wealth
Well,
planning session, figuring out what it is that you are looking to do, what you're trying to do. There are plenty of attorneys like me that do that free of charge, provided you complete some homework for me in beforehand.
okay.
Um,
So okay. Well, let me back up a little bit. What are we afraid of when we're? How come we don't do this? How come it's just not a fabric of the things that we need to do?
I think it often gets put on the back burner, even where people understand the need for it. It becomes something that is just put on the back burner. But there are oftentimes people are scared that it means that death is coming. I've heard superstitions that if I create a will, I'm going to die right after. I don't think that that's true. I think that if anything, my experience has been in sitting down and creating a estate plan, even as an attorney, has been peace of mind and knowing that I've gotten things squared away. Um, but I think there's a lack of urgency and also sometimes a concern of creating squabbles in families. So if we open up this can of worms, then what's going to happen? But if you don't
Mm.
have the conversation at all, it doesn't go anywhere. So
Okay, so we some people look at it as like we're going to squabble before or after,
right,
right? But it's better to have it lined up. It's better to have it lined up.
it's better to
And
have it lined up.
yeah,
And
yeah.
talk and you know what, I think that what's more important than whether or not the what happens in terms of the long-term plan with the will, it opens up a conversation about things like incapacity planning, which kind of touches on what I was going to say about there's an estate planning document that applies to you no matter who you are. Incapacity planning is the type of planning that applies to when you're still here. So medical advance directives, powers of attorney, are documents that name agents to make decisions for you if you are incapacitated and unable to, articulate things on your own, whether you're unconscious or just not mentally sound. Why is this important? Because you can't wait until you're at that point where when you're not with it to actually sign on that dotted line, because then it's too late. And what happens is your family ends up in court going through the process of obtaining guardianship over you, which is a lengthy process. I just finished with a family who the nursing home, I won't go into details, but it was screwy. The nursing home was trying to take the woman's house, essentially. And my client was trying to pay the bill, but could not because she did not have agency and could not get agency because the woman was already passed in her mental state. And so we were in court defending the house being taken from this nursing home.
Wow, wow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that sometimes we believe that the time to that the medical directive is a will. The medical directive is not a will. Am I correct?
Correct. I think sometimes people confuse the living will and the will. There's something called a living will, which applies to while you're still living. And the reason why it exists is to give directives to your agent. So a medical power of attorney allows an agent to make decisions with regards to your medical care, also gives them access to your medical records and waiving HIPAA and all of those things. So they can make decisions as to whether or not you should be giving long-term life support, food and nutrition, those types of things. Now, your living will is a document that basically gives directives about certain particular circumstances, but it's not exhaustive. So it can't predict every certain thing like persistent vegetative state, long-term condition. Those are the types of terms you'll see in a living will, but they can't predict everything that could possibly happen to you. So in the event that whatever's going on exceeds the scope of that living will, then your agent's decision would apply.
Okay. So I want to read the comment that's in the chat here. Ms. Goodman says, I feel like having a plan makes someone live longer because of the peace of mind. And she knows that that sounds crazy, but as soon as she took care of her mother's estate, she felt
Yes.
better.
Yes.
She felt better. There is a relief. Okay, so talk about the caregiver, right? The
That's why.
caregiver and having that peace of mind of knowing, you know, um, where things are going, who they're going to, what's happening with, particularly if the house is involved, or those, like you said, those assets, those large assets. We're not just talking about, the big screen TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who gets the big screen TV? But that large asset that your parents work so hard for,
Yep.
land.
It's part of self-care, and it's part of caring for, and for me it's part of caring for my aging, I don't like saying it like that, my mom who's getting older, although my mom's rather responsible with her stuff, but helping her understand what her papers are. She took the steps of actually doing it, but then she's like handing the paper to me like, I don't know what I signed. And so explaining that to her, it's our responsibility to care for them. But even just not even parents, what about, we have kids going away to college, turning 18. Those incapacity planning documents I was talking about, like a medical advance directive for your aging child, your 18-year-old child who's not going to be outside of your home, making decisions, doing whatever they want. If they land in the hospital, doctors aren't sharing information with you if you don't have that medical advance directive
Yeah,
in place.
yeah.
We fall into caregiving roles in all kinds of ways.
So, Samhra, you've given us like some great tips, and leave us with one more gem, whether it is a gem for encouragement or you want to tell us more about your advocacy. Leave us with something powerful.
Oh, I will say what's been on my heart lately as a female entrepreneur is a responsibility to not only make a plan for myself and my business and the succession of my business, but also educating or informing other female entrepreneurs about the impact of that as well. And so I wish I had something that was much more brilliant than that to say, but I'll say female entrepreneurs unite on the self-care aspect of things, and I think that applies to estate planning too.
Okay, but that was the best. That
Okay.
was the best thing to leave us with, because you know why? Because I'm going to tell you, we have a pitch competition coming up for female entrepreneurs. There will be two $1,000 winners of the Women's Leadership Forum Female Pitch Competition. How can you learn more about that competition? By going to the website forward WLF.org, forward WLF.org. You will learn. Okay. I like how that just magically appears. See, I have the world's best producer. Go to the website. You'll find out more about the pitch. You're going to find out how you will be in classes that will lead you to the pitch. And guess what? Operative word here, free. Free. Now, what I am so excited about is that our guest here today has agreed to sponsor that pitch competition. So she told you about her journey as an entrepreneur. That is not easy. And I will say that you also need support. What this particular competition and these workshops will give you, because it's eight workshops all together that lead you to the pitch competition. What it's going to give you is support along the way to be able to do your pitch. So we're not expecting you to come fresh and clean and know how to pitch. We're actually going to help you to do your pitch. Then you will compete among your peers. If you're a student, you are eligible for a $1,000 prize. If you're not a student, There will be a prize for you. And that is being sponsored by Samhra and her business. And see how we support one another? This is what we mean for coming together. That's what the Women's Leadership Forum is all about. And so, not only do we have the pitch competition coming up, but guess what? It's that time of year again where I start promoting the forum itself. The forum will take place March 24, 25, and it will culminate this year into a gala because guess what? Five is the operative number. It is our fifth year. It is our fifth year. Tickets will start going on sale in October. All the information that you need about what's coming up next, and we have a powerhouse coming. I'm not going to share that with you today. Yes, I am going to share it with you today. I'm going to let you know. We have Michelle Singletary. If you don't know who she is, she's a prominent writer for the Washington Post. She is going to be our keynote speaker. And for those of you who know Dr. K is going to be moderating our internship portion of the Women's Leadership Forum. And then on the third day, for you VIPs who have registered, we've got a special treat. MPT has been hard. We have been working hard on the Harriet Tubman, our presentation on Harriet Tubman. And we are going to have that ready. You get to see the sneak preview of Harriet Tubman. So we've got as the young people would say, a banging lineup for all of you all to participate in. And we've got something no matter where you are in the stage of the game. So I would like for you all, again, if you're interested, go ahead and register on the Women's Leadership Forum website, which is forwardwlf.org. If you want to get in contact with Samhra to learn more about her business, about what she has to offer, because she doesn't just do estate planning. She's got a lot more in her arsenal. Even if you just want to learn how to grow a tomato, I'm sure she'll be able to help you. You can find her on LinkedIn. You can find her on Facebook. Are you on Instagram too?
Instagram as well, Office Without Walls.
Instagram too. Do you have another handle on Instagram?
Office Without Walls and SAS Fit Practice. Those are the two handles.
All right. I would encourage you all to follow us diligently. We come up again on next Wednesday. And I'm looking forward to that. If you want to know our complete lineup, please go to forwardwlf.org. We're here at lunchtime. We're not only here to entertain you, but we're also here to inform you so that you can make the best decisions about you as you march forward. With that, I want to thank my guest, Miss Stevenson of Office Without Walls. I wish you well in your entrepreneurial journey. I thank you so much for supporting the Women's Leadership Forum and supporting the pitch competition. I also want to make mention, before I would be remiss, oh my gosh, I would be remiss not to mention that MPT also has a vehicle for which you can, if you want to just try out your little planning before you get to Samhra, you could do that also. We have a free will program that you could actually go online and try it out as a cursory venture for getting information to Samhra. Okay, so what more can you ask for? With that, I want to say, if you haven't had your lunch, go have lunch. That's part of self-care. If you've had your lunch, enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 12 noon. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Samhra, for your wealth of information.
Thank you.
And Have a great afternoon.